and welcome to another edition of Application Development Today. My name is Don Jackson. I am a Chief Technologist here at OpenText, and I'm also your host. And I'm pleased to have with me today three wonderful people, Mr. Prashant Sagalgile and Mark Turner and Alan Wendt. You only have one syllable, so I can't mess up the emphasis on the wrong syllable for you, Alan. You're killing me. So we're kicking off a new series for this new year. It's going to be a back to basics series. So we decided to start with strategic portfolio management or portfolio management. The reason being is that's kind of where idea inception starts. So we're going to go around. We have this wonderful panel. Before we get into it, though, let's do some introductions. We're going to go as I see it on my screen as I read. So we'll go with Prashant. Prashant, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, Don. Thanks for inviting me today, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. As you mentioned, my name is Prashant Sagalgile, and I work as a lead solutions consultant in the professional services, and I'm based out of Frankfurt, Germany.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Mark?
Good afternoon, all. So it's Mark Turner here, lead solution consultant for the strategic products in the OpenText portfolio, based out of the UK.
And our returning guest, Mr. Alan Wendt.
Hey, everybody. Alan Wendt, located in Austin, Texas, USA. Also a lead strategic solution consultant, as well as a community lead here in the United States and North America.
So I'm going to throw you on the spot there, Alan. So we need a new tidbit because you've been here before. You need to tell us something that the audience has never heard about you. And go.
Oh, man. Great. So I love playing the guitar, and I've been playing since I was a little kid, 6 or 8 years old. And, well, there you go. That's a good tidbit for you. I am a guitar
string or
player.
12 string?
I play the classical Spanish style nylon stringed acoustic guitar.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for everybody. It's hard to find times. We've got Germany, UK, US. We got 2 different time zones in the US, so it's hard to. I appreciate you guys. Some of us starting early, some of us staying late. I appreciate that. So let's kind of jump in. So when we talk about portfolio management and strategic portfolio management, what is it that we're talking about? What is portfolio management or strategic portfolio management? And don't everybody jump in at once.
Oh, I'll quite happily dive in there, Don. I mean, if we look at strategic portfolio management, which is what everybody wants to talk about these days from a portfolio management perspective, it's the hot topic, if you like. It really it boils down at the end of the day to being an approach that ensures that you align everything that you're doing in your portfolios of work with the strategic objectives of an organization. It essentially is that sort of simple. Just making sure that you know the reason why a piece of work is taking place. If it's consuming money and resource, why is it doing so?
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I definitely. So I've described it to customers as a dynamic accordion style. Those old file structures that were sort of paper-based that you could just pull and they would.
So not Weird Al Yankovic with an accordion?
Well, yeah, that's of course a lot of it goes back to music and my trying to equate things to things I'm familiar with. But dynamic would be something, as well as a folder structure. You've got to have a flexible and the ability to be super dynamic, but it's really a container for making better business decisions. That's one of the definitions that I've given to our customers. Prashant?
Yep, and if I have to talk about strategic portfolio management in one line, I can say it is the future of the business. And as we have seen, in one of the Gartner reports, that by 2025, nearly 70% of the digital investments will fail to deliver, the expected business outcomes due to absence of strategic portfolio management. It becomes absolutely essential to have a relook at this topic.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a
Go ahead.
So I was just going to add, Don. I think that's a stat that's been seen a number of times, that these very high numbers, 60, 70, 80% of projects that don't deliver what an organization is expecting them to deliver. And realistically, with portfolio management or strategic portfolio management, you've got ability to reverse that trend. And we all know that things are going to take place that and work is going to take place that doesn't necessarily completely align with the core drivers of the business. But when that number is 70%, that's a major problem for an organization. Reversing that from 70-30 just to 30-70 gives you a huge pot of money that you can reinvest in projects that that do fit strategic goals for the business.
Absolutely.
So as you guys can see, this is why I call these guys my triangle offense when it comes to portfolio management, right? I know there's a different Jackson, Phil Jackson, that made the triangle offense famous, but this Jackson perfected it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
Can I just ask what sport that was in?
That would be basketball.
Okay, yeah, we don't get a lot of that in the UK because we're not very
Chicago
good at it.
Bulls from the 90s, the LA Lakers from the early 2000s. Yeah.
Well, while we're on that topic, I mean, it's exciting to listen or sit for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, and a game that lasts that long and can be completely strategic and engaging can end with a score of 0-1, where we sit for 45 minutes or so, and the score might be 115 to 95 or something. So it's
0-0
there's a little
as well,
bit
Alan.
more maybe goal activity in one of those sports than the other.
I mean, in all frankness, it would be 0-0.
Yeah,
right.
And some good games are 0-0. Let's be fair. Mind you, some
like,
very dire, boring games are 0-0 as well. And we do have the concept of a draw in this country.
No, we definitely have a little bit of ADHD going on. We've got to have more action, I think, before the end of the game.
So we're fair to everyone.
I think we're goal-oriented, maybe? Oh, okay.
So speaking of goal-oriented, so that's kind of what I'm hearing when you guys are talking about strategic portfolio management is really the goals of the organization. Tying what you do back to those goals to make sure that you're delivering the value. We had a session on value, making sure you're delivering the value to the organization that it needs. So that kind of answers the question, but why is this so important, right?
Well, go ahead.
Thank you, Alan. So I was just going to say, I mean, just going back to that last point about the 70-30, 30-70 perspective. If you think of it from an organizational perspective, if they are able to evaluate a portfolio and find that in the mix of everything that they're doing, there are pieces of work that don't deliver value or are delivering a very low amount of value, the ability to then stop those pieces of work and reallocate the resource and the funds to initiatives that align with the business goals and are going to provide a higher rate of return. I mean, essentially, you are changing things. You're maximizing, or you're improving or maximizing your efficiency, and making sure that your money's in the right place, your resources are in the right place. That type of approach. So that's why I think it's a really key thing for organizations to look at.
So
we talked
are you
about
guys saying that
it's also
money's important?
The
Tying back to
dynamic
money's
nature
important?
and paying for things. Absolutely, Don. So the dynamic nature is that it's important, so you don't have to wait for those calendar budget planning cycles. You move to a real time and a consistent ongoing planning cycle. So you don't have to wait till next January or till the next end of the fiscal year to start a new initiative or to cancel an initiative or to we had a customer recently who's, imagine having this problem. A project ends early and well under budget by some 40%. But now you have resources that are on the bench for that time. Well, they had planned work for the next, 4 to 6 months. And now all of a sudden, the problem on your hand is that you're under budget and your resources are on the bench. So those are the kind of dynamic, ongoing, real-time initiatives that a strategic system of record is going to help you manage. You don't have to wait for the next fiscal year to handle that budget. But what a wonderful problem to have.
Yeah, being under budget. That's such a horrible problem.
A rare
to have,
one, though.
being under budget. Actually, when you think about it from the government perspective, if you're under budget, that's actually a huge issue, because if you don't spend your budget, you're not getting the budget next year, and that happens in a lot of enterprises as well, in the commercial sector, not just in the public sector.
You're a victim.
So
of
you guys,
Mhm.
you guys alluded a little bit to this. So how does strategic portfolio management, which was mentioned, is analysts are talking a lot about, how does that differ from classic project and portfolio management? So Prashant, if you want to kick us off on that topic.
So, I mean, when you look at the strategic portfolio management vis-a-vis the classic project and portfolio management, the difference primarily I see in how organizations respond to the changes which are being thrown at them, and are they able to include that in their response, whether that is faster time to market, whether it is responding to disruptions quickly and effectively, and whether that capability is built in within the organization. That is where I think is primarily the difference.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Now, strategic portfolio management is kind of the natural next evolution. You had sort of this traditional project management that went on that was kind of over 20 years ago, and then you sort of
Yeah, I was going to say.
Looks like we lost Alan. So he was making a very salient point that was going to change the world, and he didn't want to rock us too hard. So Mark, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I mean, portfolio management predominantly in the past is focused on the execution of work. It's still the aggregation of work upwards from projects to programs and such forth. But it has also provided the capability to somewhat optimize the portfolio, but it essentially optimizes a portfolio of work to money and resource. That's been the main capability in the past. What can I do in the timeframes that I have available to me, or what can I do with the money and the budget that I've been given? But the truth is that the strategic portfolio management takes that a step further, and then allows you to look at all of those capabilities, but align them with the goals that you have as an organization, the strategies that you're planning, the goals that they drive, and the KPIs that are trying to be delivered out of the back end of that. And therefore, you might have, 3 pieces of work that perfectly fit your resource profile. You have the budget to be able to do them. But if they all deliver the same goal and the same KPI, then what's the point in doing all 3 of them? Because
Right.
you're not delivering across a not necessarily even spread, but you're not delivering across other areas within the portfolio that have other KPIs and business goals and strategies that they need to deliver. So it takes it to that next level.
Well, it looks like now Mark has left the building. Awesome.
So I wasn't the only Android
welcome.
affected.
I didn't know we had 2 Elvises in the building, right?
Yeah,
Elvis
well,
has
that was
left the
really
building.
weird.
So,
Please.
So, how does so to you guys, so we're going to kind of go on to the next topic is how does this fit into an agile or DevOps world? How does strategic portfolio management fit into this world, where if I think about self-regulating teams, right, and where the team determines what it is that what backlog items they're going to work on with the Scrum Master and the product owner on that team, how does that strategic portfolio alignment management align to that? And welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
I wonder if Prashant is going to go next.
Yeah,
Prashant, you might want to check things, right? You got some gremlin coming in.
I've got a feeling Don's got a button. And if you just say the wrong thing or talk too long, he just keep his eye on his hands as we're doing this one.
Well,
Look,
and
Mom,
notice it was when we were each talking too. I mean, you were on your answer and you dropped off. So I think it's if he hits the button if he doesn't like the answer. So be careful, Prashant. But go ahead, Prashant, with the answer about the DevOps.
So we're talking about just so you know, Mark, how does strategic portfolio management fit into an agile and DevOps world? So Prashant, if you want to take a stab at this, see if I can kick you out.
Careful, careful with your answer.
Careful what you say.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the agile and DevOps world and how strategic portfolio management fits in, I think what is important is not only doing the things right, but doing the right things. And that is where I think strategic portfolio management plays an important role. And that is where, it brings value.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would. I'm going to try. Let's see if I satisfy the master behind the curtain. But again, we talked about this, but the goals portion of the DevOps chain is championed by the strategic approach. And so you're consistently going to continue to go back to those same organizational goals that we just talked about a few minutes ago, in my reality. But now that you're in the DevOps release trains, you're going to champion the fact that there's an end user with their set of unique goals in mind, so strategic goals that you're going to have to walk to and develop against and hit requirements against those end goals. So that's the difference with the SPM space and the DevOps chain, is that you're continuing to build against those goals that are continually iterated and important in the DevOps release chain.
Yes, real-time data, isn't it? Real-time data in terms of those goals. So it gives you, or it gives an organization the ability to act much quicker in terms of decisions that they need to make, because they're getting that real-time feedback from the DevOps chain to, back to that strategic portfolio level, so that someone can look at it and go, wow, that isn't working, or that is working, or we need to put more focus on that and less emphasis on this. So
yeah. So going to the previous question of how it differs from classic project and portfolio management, what I'm hearing from you guys, and I'm just trying to summarize, is that with classic project and portfolio management, you had these planning cycles. They were either semi-annual or annual planning cycles, and you did this, to steal a word, a retrospective of the year, and said, okay, how did things go? What do we plan for next year? Whereas with strategic portfolio management, aligning with your DevOps delivery chain, you're now being able to evaluate that real time on what's going on and pivot much more quickly than you could with the classic approach. Did I summarize that well?
Yeah, just two adjectives for me explain the difference. Rigid, which would be the approaches with hardened dates. In fact, the classic definition of a project and how it distinguishes itself from other things is that it has an established beginning and established ending date. That's an important definition in the classic space. It's very rigid. Now we have to be flexible, and things are streams,
or
those value streams, concepts, and very dynamic in nature instead of rigid.
Awesome. So when we're talking about that, so I was just thinking, so you have this application lifecycle that happens as well, or product lifecycle, right? Where a product is somebody's brainchild, it gets funded, it gets built, but at some point that product or application may no longer be providing value or the value that's intended. So it sounds like strategic portfolio management aligns with that application or product lifecycle. Am I misinterpreting, or?
No, it's the same approach essentially. I mean, a portfolio is, by its own definition, a collection of items. People talk about project portfolios, or portfolio of programs, or portfolio of epics, or whatever it might be. But a portfolio can be a collection of applications, can be a collection of any sort of other items. So if these are your applications within a business, your portfolio can look at all of the applications that you're running, understand the work that's being taken to update them, enhance them, maintain them, run them, operate them, etc., etc. And then analyze that portfolio in exactly the same way. So I mentioned earlier about the example of there being 3 projects that provide value for the same business goal. Looking at an organization and being able to understand that you've got 3 applications that do the same job, you're essentially spending or wasting money by not streamlining what you're running as a business. So it's the same type of approach, just ensuring that you're investing where you should be investing.
And Don, I have seen in many organizations, the application portfolio has grown. I mean, it's become bloated, has grown beyond an IT organization's ability to manage it effectively within a budget constrained environment. And at times, it is essential to take a step back, understand the status quo, and ask some questions. Whether those applications are performing as desired, whether these applications returns justify the investment which one needs to do on it, and whether the risk of ownership is really worth it. Does the application portfolio need to be adapted to new requirements which are coming in? So all these questions needs to be asked, and and that actually gives the insight how you need to manage the application portfolio per se.
So application, what I'm hearing is rationalization of your applications and or products, depending on how you define them, right? So a product may fit
absolutely
with multiple applications.
Yep.
Right. So this becomes even more prevalent when you're working in M&A, mergers and acquisitions, right? By the way, define your acronym right there, right? M&A. So mergers and acquisitions, you have duplicative value streams coming in from if you're doing a merger or even a divestiture. How do I pull that out? So that rationalization or application portfolio management that you guys were talking about.
Well,
so
that's maybe a lead into a future topic, because I think that actually deserves its own little space, kind of somewhere in the future. So if we're, grooming your backlog, I would suggest that we have a discussion just about that rationalization activity, because it's changed. And the technology in that space has really evolved just in the last 5 years. But that's a topic for another day, Don. We're flooding
and
your
bless
backlog.
you, Mark. Bless you,
Thank
Mark.
you very much.
Yeah.
As quietly as I could possibly be, Don.
It was amazing, right? We didn't hear it, but we absolutely
His head exploded.
saw it, right?
Yes.
His head exploded.
Yeah.
So
My tops flew off.
Hold on just a second, Don. The one
Sure.
thing that I wanted to say is that naturally also in an organization, you have a tendency to organize things kind of 2 different ways from a IT perspective. Classically, you would organize them by these products. You're handling product 1, 2, and 3, and this team's handling 4, 5, and 6, and that, or by architecture. You're handling something that was coded with C. You're handling something back in the days that was coded with COBOL, or you're a new web application. When you do that, that actually tends to break across these lines of congruence. So an application that might be for purchasing would be broken across teams. And that kind of doesn't help when you're trying to rationalize the applications, because the architecture and the technology behind the scenes is different. But there is now a movement toward moving those resources onto the same functional value stream. And so the purchasing applications are handled by one agile team, and the point of sale applications are handled by another team. So there's a movement even in the IT industry to group things according to how they functionally affect the customers, the end customer, both internal and external, instead of breaking them apart with architecture, because you have a mixture on a particular agile team of different expertise in all those different architectures and technologies. And that's also a change that's happened just in the last probably 4 or 5 years.
So speaking of change, right? So we've alluded to some of this. We've talked a little bit about, but I'd like to consolidate it all into one topic area, and that is how has portfolio management changed as the industry has started shifting, because we're in different areas of digital transformation, from waterfall to agile. And Mark has left the building. He didn't like my question, apparently. And shifting from projects to products. How has portfolio management changed?
Prashant, you want to take a stab at that, and then I'll follow up, and let's see if Mark can rejoin us.
What I'm seeing is the more there's a focus now. I'm seeing there's a focus on value, and that is actually I'll say a major shift, and that is a primary reason why even the portfolio management has changed over a period of time. Of course, does it mean that the classic portfolio management is dead? No, both classic project portfolio management and the strategic portfolio management to coexist, and they work hand in hand, and they will continue to do so. That's what is I personally
kind of like waterfall and agile, or
absolutely
Scrummerfall, or agile fall.
Yeah, and I think if a traditional project always looked at budget and resources, whereas in the agile world we talk about story points and teams and that type of approach. It's the same thing, just cut slightly different in many respects. But the agile piece definitely has a greater focus on value, as Prashant alluded to there. But I think it's also very fair to say as well, and I'm sure that people will agree here, that it isn't an agile world or a waterfall world, but it very much is a hybrid world. It's very rare, I think, that we come across anyone that is specifically one or the other. But 90+% or whatever the numbers would be, it is a hybrid world, and you need to have the ability to manage both sides of that coin effectively and efficiently.
We, at least I've seen in most customers, now that it's changing slowly, but typically the IT or technology-based teams will have adapted the new agile approach, and it's more customer-centric, and there's a lot more ends in mind. You have more chances through the development cycle to show the end customer what's going to be delivered. Back in what we called in the test space the V model days, and sorry, that's the victory model, if you want to call that, but it went down into a trough, and there were potentially months of time that you didn't even talk to your customers because you were back behind the curtain working amongst the technical team, and the only time you got a chance to expose what was happening again to your customers was at the end of a long development cycle. Now you'll have that customer even baked into the team, so there's always represented in those stand-up meetings that happen daily or on a regular basis. The customer is always seeing the end throughout the process, and that's a totally different approach. Also, the concept of self-managing teams. Today isn't about agile, but yes, the Scrumfall approach is the business still tends to be waterfall and more classic approaches, and so you have the introduction of the hybrid model is that you still need to run business, even while the technology teams are doing it in a different, more self-managed way. You're still getting the job done, and operations is still happening while this new methodology approach is slowly being deployed out, even nowadays, to the businesses. And so you have customers that the business now is adopting those approaches and starting to use that lexicon of adjectives to describe their daily team interactions.
Compliance is a big thing from the business perspective that drives that waterfall approach. But it's a great definition because it is so much more customer centric, and I think we did go through a process where, as Alan described, you wouldn't see your customer for 6 months, and then you deliver something, and somebody would say, "Oh, that's not what I wanted," which was a real nightmare. And we did go through this process of these much smaller iterations where it stopped being 6 months to being every 2 weeks or every month or every week or whatever it might be. But absolutely, I agree that it's now most of the time the customer is baked into that process, so it is a constant feedback rather than a weekly or a monthly iteration as it has been previously.
So I'd ask the question: is it the chicken or the egg? So did strategic portfolio management help to change our behavior of how we deliver products, or was it the change of how we're delivering products push strategic portfolio management into existence as the evolution of classic project and portfolio management? I don't know that we're going to have an answer for that, but it's just
Well,
to me it's a
I'll
chicken
give
and
you
egg
one
thing.
because the answer is yes. It was a little of both. I think with new technology, especially the ability to collaborate in real time, I'll never forget going on a retreat with an organization that we're tied to here locally. And I'm driving one of the transportation buses. The guy behind me was on another, and they were telling me that it was time to take a restroom break. I'm like, well, how? The teenagers that we had on the bus are the ones that were on their cell phones communicating with one another about, I don't feel well, I got to go to the bathroom, and they had this whole communication stream. And I'm just like, I'm looking for somebody to flip their lights at me or pass me up. And, I'm looking for old school. And they're like, oh no, Bob needs to go to the bathroom now. We need to exit at the next stop. And it was just a real eye-opening situation for me as an old fogey guy who my phone was in my bag or something. It wasn't right next to me. Just
Well, I would
the
hope not, since you
stream.
were driving. Yeah.
Okay, right. The stream of communication is it's just so much different than it was when we didn't have those technologies in hand. And I think that absolutely contributes to the real-time nature of these decisions that we're talking about.
So strategic portfolio management facilitates real or near real-time decisions about what you're doing on a team and a team of team level is what I'm hearing. Did I summarize that well?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You did.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today. I feel like I've learned some stuff. I hope the audience has as well around strategic portfolio management. As we do on every episode, we always have parting thoughts, or as we call them, words of wisdom. So we'll do it in reverse order on my screen. So Alan, if you want to do some some Alan's words of wisdom.
It's fantastic acronym usage. The one thing we didn't talk a lot about, we talked about funding, but I just definitely a great conversation today. I would remind folks that there are humans at the end of these tasks that we're talking about. And so the resource planning and the optimization of what people are working on. I mentioned that, if the problem that you have with people on the bench, you've got to, be able to also be super agile and super dynamic about your resource allocations, and that there are humans that are being assigned to these tasks that we're talking about. So the resource impact is really an element that also is equally as important as strategic alignment. But yeah, thanks, Don.
The OCM, the organizational change management, is still a thing that you have to worry about because these are people. Great words of wisdom. So Mark's words of wisdom.
Thank you for that, Don. I think I'm going to go back to the old, one of the oldest project management analogies that I can ever remember learning, which was all about eating the elephant by cutting it into chunks. And I think the transition to that's it. And I think that the transition to strategic is not actually as difficult as people may think that it is, because essentially by capturing one attribute, one piece of information against all the projects that we're working on, whether that's a strategic alignment field or a percentage bucket allocation or something along those lines, will give you a starting point and a foothold into the world of that strategic portfolio capabilities. So I think that would be my parting thought, that it's a journey that is actually not that difficult to get started on and can drive considerable value for a small investment.
Yeah, take that first step. You got to take that first step. So Prashant's words of wisdom, P-Wow.
I mean, I feel it's a journey, and even though strategic portfolio management is here to stay, ultimately, as we have discussed, it is the people who matter. So no matter what information you have at your hand, but ability to infer from that information, drive insights is something which is important, and that is what enables organizations to ultimately succeed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the words of wisdom, guys. So tune into the next in this series of Back to Basics. Our next one is going to be about classic requirements management. When we talk about requirements management, and how does requirements management, when you think about it from a waterfall perspective, how does that actually fit into our Agile and DevOps world? We'll be talking about that. Next in the series will be backlog management. We're going to talk about grooming a backlog. How do you successfully manage that? We're then going to go into test management. So near and dear to my heart, I started off as a tester, and then we'll talk about basics of functional automation as the next episode. The episode after that will be performance engineering, and then we're going to talk about everybody's favorite, defect management is where we're going to wrap up that series. So we have this whole series that we have planned out for you. And I want to thank our guests again today, Prashant, Alan, and Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed you guys leaving the building and coming back in. At least you came back. I don't know what I did to offend you with my questions, but hey, thanks for taking the time today, guys. If you liked the video, please click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we release new videos.